A little disclaimer for today's episode. This episode with Steve was our pilot episode, so there was a couple of technical considerations with the camera setup, so please do forgive that. Fortunately, all the content is really good. Steve has some really fantastic bits of information to share that you can take away or implement in your own business, so let's jump straight in. Welcome to the Making Weddings Work podcast with myself, Stuart, and my good friend Toby. Now, we're both independent wedding videographers with about 10 years experience each in the industry. So our goal is to interview, talk to, chat with the most successful brands in the industry and find out how they've been successful in growing and scaling their business and achieving the success that they've got today. So we're delighted to welcome onto the show today Steve from Blue Ridge Films. So obviously from that, he's a videographer, and since this is a podcast about the wedding industry, he films weddings as well. Steve's been going for a number of years now. He's a big contributor across the industry. He posts loads of helpful information, loads of links to relevant resources, and he just shares so much openly to help others just in passing. So because of that, we thought it'd be great to have him on the show, sit down with him, and really get into the detail about how his business works. So how did you get into the wedding industry? How did you decide that this was where you wanted to set up a business? What brought you to where you are now?
I went to Coventry University following a few years of sort of education doing media production. Ended up at Coventry University to finalise my degree, and on that course I met the other two guys that I'm in the business with, Nick and Tim. And we did our final major production together, and we worked a lot together anyway on the course, and doing the kind of FMP as like a kind of the thing that you do to kind of before you graduate. That kind of I think kind of gelled our sort of friendship and the way we worked together, and we all kind of felt comfortable working together. So yeah, it just felt like a natural progression to kind of graduate and then set up a business. With lofty goals of being the next sort of Tiger Aspect, shooting dramas for television and stuff like that. But to get to that point, we thought, what's a kind of good way to start off and hone our skills and kind of earn money. And weddings seemed like a kind of good avenue for that. So that's kind of how we kind of jumped in there.
Okay. And did you have a sort of USP that you went in with immediately, or was it an organic thing? Did you just sort of start off shooting?
Yeah, so I think back then, so we graduated in 2012, and I think our first full year of weddings was like 2014. So the first couple of years we were, I think we were working and kind of trying to find ways to kind of get weddings, essentially get work. And in terms of like a USP, I guess our USP was trying to be that we were kind of from this kind of creative background. For our FMP that we produced, we travelled over to Spain to film it. It was like a kind of western, and we were lucky enough to we got it submitted and entered into a film festival in California, and we sort of flew out to the film festival. The university kind of like helped fund that. We flew out there and kind of experienced that, and so we got a few kind of nominations and stuff. So we kind of used that as a springboard to sort of say like we're this kind of creative team, and our background is in narrative filmmaking, and that's the sort of thing that we can bring to the wedding side of things. And as a result, the kind of equipment that we use plays into that. Like we had back then it was all the rage, like the sort of like a slider in terms of the video. We also had like a small jib. Looking back, it was crazy the sort of some of the stuff we used to use, but we thought that would help us set us apart a little bit, and I think it did. So I do think it was important, and it was a good decision looking back.
And what was that year? What year did you start?
So I think we shot our first wedding in 2013, but our first kind of full year of weddings was 2014, and we managed to fill our calendar quite quickly.
And were you all shooting a wedding, or did one of you shoot a wedding? Or?
So back then, we were shooting as a 3, which again seems crazy now. As an aside, we shoot as a 2 now, and we essentially rotate. Which is still obviously most videographers shoot solo, so that's still not too common. But back then shooting as a 3 was like that seems mental, but it worked, and it all allowed us to, like I say, kind of get to grips with it, and grow as a team of people kind of working together as well. So.
And so how did you come together to set up the legal side of the company? So what's your setup for that? Are you limited? Are you sole trader? Partnership?
Yeah. So we're a limited company. Where all three of us are directors, all sort of own equal shares. So yeah, that back then that's how it was set up. It's still set up this way, but the structure of the business has changed a little bit over the years.
And was there something that was going on at that time that made you decide that? What made you think to?
Good question. I think I can't remember if we took much advice in that regard. I think it just seemed like, if we're going to start a business, we need to go on Company's House, need to start a limited company. I don't think we ever really considered a partnership. It just seemed to make more sense that we were like a limited company.
And did you formalize any business plan or anything like that you took, or was it very much just three friends together and you relied on that sort of mutual trust and understanding and friendship?
So but mostly the latter. But I've just remembered, actually, as one of the things that we did do, I think was it in our final year at university or the year following, we essentially we joined it was a course set up by the university called Speed, and it was essentially intended for students wanting to start businesses from university following graduation, and as a result they kind of helped. They provided a small amount of funding. Really, that wasn't the main aspect of it, but they also provided a bit of guidance as well. So as part of that, we had to kind of do like a business plan. So we did do a business plan. It wasn't too detailed, I don't think, and it was just kind of three students out of university kind of trying to work out how to do a business plan. But yeah, we did it as part of that. So yeah, but I think aside other than that, it was more of just a kind of trust of three friends that we wouldn't kind of screw each other over.
And is there stuff since then that you thought, if you went back now, you'd have like put into that plan, or any of the legal side you didn't do at the time?
Good question. I don't think so. Maybe I think one of the things I've started to do in the past couple of years is doing forecasts and looking at future income and expenditure. So and now that I do it, I can't imagine not doing it. So going back, I'd probably do that from the kind of day one and try and kind of forecast a bit better. So then, to have a better understanding of what's coming down the line.
Okay, and then and practically, what do you actually do for that? How do you do that? Is it something you do in a spreadsheet, or do you use sort of software?
So yeah, use a piece of software. I use a piece of software called Float. There's quite a few that are out there, and that links with our accounting software, which we use Xero, which is very similar to sort of I think Free Agent and QuickBooks and stuff, but we use Xero, and then that links in with that, so that can essentially pull in I think the last 12 months of income and all the kind of expenditure, and then all I have to do then essentially is kind of put in predicted income. So obviously in terms of weddings, that's kind of final balances, deposits, and then predicted expenditure. So that's obviously paying someone like Nick or Tim to film a wedding, that sort of thing. So yeah, the software we use is Float, and it is really handy, especially during the time that we're in now, to kind of predict what's kind of get an idea of the next 6 months.
No, that's good. So what would you say to people that don't do that sort of thing? Like what did it make you realise, that you're just sort of blind when you're not forecasting? Yeah,
a little bit. It definitely gives you more security. I'd say that much. Like being able to look at the computer screen and being able to see that, for the next 12 to 14 months, I've got this amount coming in, this is my outcome, this is how much my wage is, so that'll last me till here. So it's really nice to know that I've got that security, which really helps. And yeah, so I think it is important, but like I say, it's only something I've started doing the last sort of 18 to 24 months. And so
and you'd say it saved you? Has it saved you money, or has it made you more disciplined?
That's a good. Yeah, it probably has saved. I think the software itself costs around £50 a month, so it's not cheap. But there's probably alternatives that you can get that are cheaper, different. But it's definitely saved money, yeah, because like you say, you can kind of see on a rolling monthly basis. I can see this is how much money came out of the company for the last month, for the month before, and it breaks it down into what those things were, so that I can see, okay, well, that's a big drain on our finances, and I can do I really need that? So it definitely has. I've definitely made decisions to, stop subscriptions or stop things as a result of it, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Like, I know I'm big on my cash flow forecast. Like, it's probably the document I open my email and then I open my cash flow forecast document. So, but are you looking at anything else like profit and loss? Are you maybe even touching on balance sheet stuff there? Like, what documents are in?
Yeah, a little bit. Within Xero, we have access to kind of the profit and loss reports and balance sheets and stuff. I probably don't look at those as much, but I still dive into them like a few times a month, I would say, just to kind of get an idea of how things are looking, especially when it comes to kind of keeping under the VAT threshold as well, because we're not VAT registered. We used to be, but I can talk about that. But we used to be, so it's important that we kind of keep under that. And that kind of helps knowing, and also for tax purposes as well, obviously knowing, at least with the profit and loss, knowing, like how much tax we might be liable for, corporation tax and stuff like that.
Cool. So, I mean, I guess you've touched on it there. So, like, would you be good enough to give us a kind of vague breakdown of where your sort of turnover's been at, maybe for the last couple of years, and has that grown, and why you think that's grown? Things that you've done, implemented, changes in the industry, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So I'd say on average, so prior to kind of deregistering for VAT, our turnover was probably around 100,000 to 110,000 on average, I would say. But that kind of, therein lies the problem with being registered for VAT, in that if you're registered for VAT, unless you're kind of really kind of breaking past that barrier, it's not really worth it. Because obviously you've got to pay 20% on everything, and obviously from the wedding side of things, that was really tricky. Like, we made a decision not to kind of increase our prices 20%, but rather to soak that cost up. So yeah, I'd say when we were VAT registered, it was around that, and the growth came from doing weddings. The idea was we'd grow the company and obviously bring in more money by doing more corporate work, so business to business video, and that's just something that we've done well, I think, but we've never really kind of cracked. I think it's a lot I think we found quite good success in the wedding market, but we've never quite cracked the corporate side of things. It's very, like, with the wedding side, there's a clear market. You can reach them via social media, wedding fairs, bridal magazines, referrals, that sort of thing. But with the corporate side, there's no clear way of kind of reaching those businesses, and we've tried so many different things to kind of do that. And like I said, we have found success. We've had some good clients, and we still do have some good clients. But generally, that was the kind of intention. We were going to grow the business from that side, because there's only so many weddings you can shoot at a certain price point. So yeah, so since kind of deregistering for VAT, it's pivoted a bit more to focus more on weddings and maybe do a bit less corporate work. So as a result, yeah, it's just trying to keep under the 85,000 kind of mark every year.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point about that. With weddings, it is quite a clear path that you go down to reach out to brides, to couples, to find clients and stuff. But with corporate, it can just be anywhere. It's maybe more through a connection that you've got, or your network and stuff.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, on the corporate side, all of our biggest jobs, like we've done, I think we've done a couple of TV adverts. We did one that was on sort of Sky Sports, and that came from that was our biggest job, and that came from just someone that we'd worked with previously and that referred us. And I think most of our work's kind of come from that path. So it is really tricky, and like I feel like we've always done good work, and we've been like, I feel like we've been a good client to the business. Like, we've worked hard and that sort of thing. So we just assume that the more we do, the more work we generate. And like I say, it has, come in drips and drabs, but it's never really kind of grown to the level that was sort of sustainable for the three of us. And also to remain VAT registered. I think that was the tricky part, because it was just such a sort of suck on the financial side of things.
So did you ever think about doing anything like splitting the company up into like the wedding brand and the corporate brand? I think a lot of people have that thought running through their head and maybe dismiss it, or or do take it and run with it. So I mean,
we did consider that. We did consider that, and that we kind of got advice from our accountant on that, but ultimately decided to kind of keep them together. Just because of the kind of the cost side of things. That like the one business would own all the kind of video equipment, so the other sort of the other entity, it would have to essentially, if like the kind of corporate business would have to kind of like almost like rent the equipment from the wedding business kind of, and so on and so forth, and it just got very complicated. So yeah, we just kind of kept it as it was.
And just to interrupt the conversation for a moment, to give a shout out to all the places where you can follow our journey on making weddings work. So you can reach out to us on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and on Spotify. So please get subscribing, get telling your friends, pass the podcast around. If you've got someone else that you know in the wedding industry that could benefit from the topics that we're covering, topics that we're going to talk about, the guests that we're going to have on, please let them know about us. Please spread that love and let other people become more successful with their wedding business. Now, let's jump straight back in to the conversation.
You were talking a little bit about it's sort of easier with weddings to know where to direct things. What would you say to people? What's your main advice on where you put your money if you're going to do advertising, or if you do advertising at all, or whether you think brand's the key thing? What do you think is the main way you attract couples?
A few years back, we kind of rebranded because we felt that was kind of the weaker part of the business. It was okay, but we felt it kind of it looked a bit cartoony. Some people might have seen our old logo. It looked a bit sort of childish at times, so we kind of changed that. And we've always felt like our quality of work is kind of there. We're quite happy with that. And then like the network's just an ongoing thing, just building those relationships with other suppliers, other venues. I think once you've got those three in place, hopefully at least we've found that inquiries come in and the work kind of comes in, and we don't spend at the minute. I don't think we spend any money on marketing.
Okay.
We have in the past, and I could talk about that. We have in the past. We used to do the National Wedding Show twice yearly, so that was around. I think that was usually around £2,500 a time, but that, I think on average we probably took between 8 and 12 bookings from that. So, and I think our price point then was probably between 1,800 and 2,000. So, it always kind of worked out well, and we always kind of made our money there. But then we kind of the last big national wedding show that we did, we didn't take any bookings from, because at that point we'd kind of raised our prices.
Okay. And with your branding, you said you decided to tweak it, sort of thing. Did you have a sort of client in mind when you were doing that? Was the way you decided to focus it on the sort of clients you were trying to get, or was it more of a personal taste, the way you want to present yourselves? How did you? Yeah,
a bit of both, I'd say. Yeah, we probably did have a sort of client in mind. Like I think our brand is, we like to think it's sort of fun, it's creative, and it's quality. That's the sort of few words that I think of, and that's the kind of idea that we had in mind. And I think a lot of our kind of wedding couples are sort of working professionals, like they work in the legal industry, or they're doctors and things like that. So we had that sort of person in mind as well. So we wanted our sort of branding to be professional, but also look to be a bit fun and kind of have that creative element to it as well. Which is what we've kind of settled on.
Yeah, because I noticed on your website you've got quite a lot of like dancing and party stuff and glitter and all that. Is that where you sort of, is that your focus? Do you go for couples that are having like big parties and that sort of thing?
Yeah, and that's something that's definitely evolved over the last couple of years, I'd say. Like we've always, that's the sort of style I think we've settled on. And I think that's definitely come over the last couple of years more so. We've kind of finally got to a place where we're kind of quite comfortable with it. And I think, where we sort of focus more on the kind of fun party aspect of like a wedding. And a lot of sort of the couples that book us, they often kind of have that style in mind as well. And they expect to have lots of dancing at their wedding, and they like a lot of their guests love to have a party and stuff. So, and again, that comes into the whole USP thing. Like, I think it's important as a wedding supplier, whatever you do, if it's video, photo or anything, is to try and set yourself apart a little bit. And I think that helps to set us apart a little bit. There's not many others that I think that I can think of that kind of focus maybe on that side of things. So that's a nice little. It's a happy medium, because it's like, I think the party aspect of a wedding is the part that I really enjoy as well. But it also, I think, does help set us apart a little bit.
I think that's interesting for people that are maybe thinking they've got stuck in a rut or something like that. That they just need to think about those little things to tweak just to influence the sort of clients they get. I mean, did you find just changing the sort of clips you had on your homepage was enough to influence the type of clients you got? Or
yeah, I think so. Even just on our homepage, you've got the sort of backdrop, you're immediately hit with like kind of people dancing, having fun, and I think that's a kind of straight away. I like to think that's like a kind of, it hits the viewer in the face, and it's like, okay, that's what these guys are about, hopefully. So yeah, it wasn't a much, and then just kind of having, I think there's a silly photo of the three of us, which was at Tim's wedding when he got married. There's like a silly photo of us just to show that, we don't take ourselves too seriously, and that kind of goes in line with the whole kind of party aspect of the wedding. So yeah, it doesn't take a lot to like say, to change what your client may perceive of you when they kind of check out your work and stuff. So
All right, so we've talked a bit about your branding and stuff and the types of clients you get. Let's talk about pricing then, the one that everybody wants to know about. Prices on or off your website. What's your approach? Are you packages? Are you a la carte? Are you a mix of both? And if you want, what sort of price points what's your average selling price and stuff for a wedding film?
cool. So start with prices on or off website. So our prices are off our website, but that isn't because we want to be secretive about it per se. It's for a long time they were on there, and I in a lot of ways I do prefer them being on the website, because it breaks down that initial barrier of when you get an inquiry. In theory, the person inquiring already knows how much you charge, and they still want to know more, which is nice. But I'm a firm believer that prices off now are better for the amount of information that it garners. So generally, if you have prices off your website, it tends to lead to more inquiries, which I think are a really important resource of what works and what doesn't work. So, say if you had your prices on your website, you might get 10 inquiries a month, but if you have your prices off your website, you might get 100 inquiries. I'm not saying that we do, just pick those figures out of thin air. Those extra 90 inquiries will tell you where they found you. They'll tell you, like, if they found you through a friend, a photographer, a venue, on Google, on social. So, and that information is really important, because then if you do want to put money somewhere, you know where to put it. Okay, well, Google works for me. A lot of people find me on there. I'll put more money into Google. I don't need to put more money into Google because that works okay. Or maybe people don't find me enough through referrals, so maybe I need to improve that somehow. So yeah, prices off the website for that reason. And we used to, over the years, we offered 3 packages, and they were like a kind of top, middle and bottom approach, which a lot of people do, like a kind of entry level, mid level, and then top level kind of price point. But as of now, we just offer 1 package, which a lot of the other suppliers do this, but I like the idea of just having 1 package that can allow us to film all day and kind of get the best out of the wedding, as it were. Because ultimately, the thing that will get us bookings in the future is doing good work at previous weddings. So I just want to try and get the best out of every wedding. That sounds cheesy, but that is the kind of idea behind it. So 1 package, which is all day coverage with 2 people. It's always myself, and then Tim and Nick rotate, basically. And that's £2,500 currently from kind of 3 hours before the ceremony up till about an hour after the first dance. But even then, we're pretty flexible with that as well. So we sometimes film later.
So 2005, I guess, 2,500 is kind of where we are all at as a 3 then, I guess, where we bounce around those figures. Do you find, I would say that you're getting to a point in the market then where there is maybe a cut off, or it's another segment that you have to go into? Do you find that, or how often do you kind of maybe touch on the $3,000 bookings?
Yeah, so we do have a few parts that can upsell. Like we offer an Instagram trailer and stuff like that. So I think our average is probably around that, but there's a few that we've booked. I think we've got one. Well, did have one for this year, but it's moved to next. That was, I think, 4,000, but that's like a two day thing. And then we've got one in Italy that's that ends up being around, I think it's just under 4,000 as well. So yeah, it's a tricky one. Pricing is obviously really tricky, and it's what everyone wants to kind of know what the secret to it is. But
No, I think you're right about pricing. Yeah, I think it's fair enough to say it's like you're testing that sort of thing all the time, aren't you? It's one point I'd say about it's nice thing about not having a price on your website is you can tweak things. You can, I don't know, you might realise actually this wedding's more difficult than that wedding, and pricing could be a little bit more fluid maybe with that sort of thing. Or do you still have a set price like in the background?
No, yeah, we generally just do have the set price, but that's a good point. I know a lot of other people might have a slightly lesser price for like a local wedding and like a higher price for like a further afield, and then like a certain price for say London weddings as well. So that's something I've kind of toyed with, and may kind of experiment with that over the next kind of 12 to 24 months. But yeah, I think I'm worried with pricing that it gets. There's a certain type of ideal client that I think everyone would like from a wedding, which is a client that really values your work and is willing to pay obviously what you would like to charge. And I worry with pricing that going too high might take away. You might have clients that really value and love your work, but might not necessarily be able to stretch to that kind of price point. So I'm always worried about the idea of pushing it a bit too high and then losing those kind of clients, because we've done weddings before where we've just felt like part of the sort of part of the staff, as it were, and treated in that way, which is fine. I know not everyone like books a videographer and books them for that because they adore their work. They just want to sort of tick have a tick on their list. So I get that, but I worry that with a price going too high, that it might bring more people that are just kind of want to tick, got a videographer.
Yeah, I think you make a good point that it's like pricing should be one of your goals, but if it's the only thing you're thinking about, you're forgetting about the quality. You've got to spend a day doing this thing, and you've got to enjoy shooting it and enjoy the sort of people you're working with. So yeah, if you go too far down one route, you might find you're just booked by a planner and no one gets to know you, and you never even meet the client, and you lose that aspect of your business that you might have enjoyed, So
yeah, and I think some of the weddings that I've enjoyed the least are sometimes it's those weddings where we are just kind of just treated as just any other supplier, and the weddings I enjoy the most are the ones where the couple like really love our work and like they really buy into what we do, and ultimately that's more important to me than charging more. The only thing that I would say about maybe charging more is to maybe do slightly less weddings per year, purely because I've got a young daughter, and I think since she came along, I think that's kind of really changed my outlook a bit on kind of spending more time with her and doing less every weekend kind of thing. So that would be a bit of a goal, is to try and do less weddings for slightly more money, but not necessarily at the kind of cost of losing to a certain type of client.
Out of interest, do you have a number you go for in a year with weddings? Do you have like an upper limit?
Yeah, I think at the minute it's around 25 to 30, but okay. It can depend on because we still do the corporate work as well. If we've got a few big corporate jobs that might be penciled in, we can reduce the amount of weddings we do, which again comes into the idea of where forecasting kind of comes in, and knowing how much money the weddings will bring in, and I can see then, okay, well, we've got 20 weddings booked, it brings in X amount of money, I might need to book another 5 more, hopefully, to try and kind of get to a point that I'm happy with. So that's really important. So that kind of dictates sometimes, knowing how much money those weddings are going to be bringing in, to know if I need to book any more.
Okay. And would you like it to be fewer than 30, or is that a number you like? Or?
Yeah, I'm quite happy with 30, but yeah, I think
okay.
I'd happily do less. Again, not because I don't enjoy them, I absolutely love shooting weddings, but I'm 33, 34 this year. So I think I'm starting to get into my lower back's telling me, I think more and more that you're getting a bit too old for this. Not that I'm old by any stretch, but I think and like I say, with a younger daughter, I think I'd like to spend more weekends with her.
Cool. That's that comment you made about prices not on the website, so you could get the data of where you came from. That's the first time I've ever actually heard that said like that. As much as it totally makes sense and seems like straightforward, I've never heard anyone put that forward as the argument. Obviously they want to like find out about the wedding beforehand. If you haven't got the inquiry, you can't do anything about it. But to just have it broken down with that sort of business analysis, like backdrop to it I thought it was really good.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, that actually stemmed from when we did do our rebrand. I think a couple of years ago now. We did the new website, and I actually did the website using flow themes. Which, looking back, I'm happy with how it looks and stuff. But looking back, it was an absolute ball ache, and it took me ages. And I wish, would have preferred to pay someone to do it. But one of the big things we were kind of worried about was changing the website, especially with me doing it, and how that might affect people finding us on Google and stuff like that. Because we always seem to do okay with that. We always used to get a lot of people that found us on sort of Google and all that sort of thing. So we took our prices off from that point to hopefully bring in more inquiries to see, are people still finding us on Google? And it turned out they were. We still got loads of inquiries that's how they found us. So that was the idea behind that. And then I think since then I've spoken to other suppliers, other photographers that say the exact same, like that they totally believe having prices off the website to get that data is far more valuable.
Yeah, what business solutions do you use? What software, what things do you use that really help your business? You mentioned a couple earlier on, but are there things that really just make your life easier?
Yeah, so definitely a CRM, using something like Studio Ninja, which is what we use currently. Again, I think we settled on that because I wanted something that was powerful but simple. And I think that's their kind of USPs. That I know there are things like Light Blue and Tave or Tave, I'm not sure how you say it. I think it's the idea that it's relatively easy to use, and I wanted something that we could kind of get set up quickly, but was did all the things we needed to see, which was basically kind of tracking inquiries, being able to respond to them quickly, and obviously kind of more the most important thing is just keeping a track of the bookings that we have, and all that kind of data and information. And for that purpose, it works brilliantly. And I know with something like Tave, it has. I think that you can get a bit more detailed reports and stuff, and it's got a few more integrations. Which maybe now I would like that, because there's a few couple of photographer friends that are really, really hot on their tracking all their inquiries and tracking all that data, like so much so that every single inquiry they get, they put it into a spreadsheet, and then it kind of knows where it came from, so they can see, like, even broken down into something like percentages, like, okay, we get X amount of percentages from this source, and this source brings in X percentage of bookings. And I think, again, that's really important. And I did try and do that for a bit, but I didn't keep up with it, so I kind of lost interest. But I know kind of things like Tave kind of offer that a bit more than Studio Ninja.
What do you use, Stuart?
I got 17 Hats maybe 2 years ago, and I think I've in no way got it set up to do everything that it can do, because that's like a skill set in itself almost, isn't it? But from just having it kind of at a basic level to deal with inquiries, even just automating contracts and invoices, things that have gone from taking maybe 15 minutes, so not a long time, are now literally just, it's automated and it is click a button. And that all comes through from what the client types in, so it gets rid of mistakes. Like, I'm always worried about inputting the wedding date wrong, like something like that. So if the client puts it in wrong, it's kind of on them.
It's also something about having that, I have a client access button on my website, then people can get to their contracts and their invoices and all that. So I think clients like that, because they might book you a year or so in advance, and you don't necessarily interact with them all the time, and it gives them that little bit of security that they can see that they've got this job sitting there, that sort of thing. So other than CRMs, what else do you like? What about web design? What do you use for your website and stuff? Do you do that yourself, or do you have a company that does it?
No, so I do that myself. I set up the website. I think it's set up on WordPress, and then we use Flow themes for the theme. So I mostly kind of take care of that. I'm not a web designer or web person by any means, but I think WordPress is pretty straightforward, and Flow themes is pretty straightforward. So yeah, I mostly do that myself. We also use a piece of software called Trello, which is a kind of, I don't know how best to describe it. It's almost like a list. It's like you can create lists, and then you can kind of organize those lists. So it's really handy for keeping track of wedding edits, and kind of start having like okay, this wedding, all these weddings are at this stage, these weddings are at this stage, and you can kind of have like deadline dates and stuff, so you can kind of move them along. And it's a nice visual way of kind of seeing, again, sort of seeing the wedding edits that you've got and where they kind of need to be and stuff. So yeah. It's called Trello, Trello, and I think it's completely free. You can pay for extra things, but we don't. We just use the free version.
Oh, I like that.
So
Get away from having stuff on a whiteboard like I do.
That's essentially what it is. I think that's the way they sell it. Is that though it's like a digital kind of like a whiteboard sort of thing, and you can have obviously it works well for us because you can have multiple people access it, so you can like have other people see it and stuff. And if you wanted, you could even have if you wanted to have that kind of level of transparency, you could have it so clients could see it, so they could see where their edit is and stuff. But we don't do that, but you could if you wanted.
So our Instagram handle is nice and easy. It's just instagram.com/MakingWeddingsWork, all one word. The biggest thing we're pushing is our Facebook community, where we want to grow, we want to have discussions outside of the podcast and as a result of the podcast. So maybe we have a guest on and we don't ask a question. We want you to be able to put that question forward and we'll go back to the guest and try and get answers for that, just to really create a thorough process and let everyone get the exact information that they want to help them build a better, stronger wedding business together. Our Facebook community group is also really easy to find. If you just search Making Weddings Work on Facebook, you'll get directed over there. When you request to join, there'll be 3 short answers that pop up just to make sure that you are a wedding supplier and that you will get value from the group once you submit them. Myself and Toby will then let you into the group, into the community, and you can post away anything you like. You can see the discussions that are going on there, you can see further information, and if you want to get something free from us right away, you can head on over to our actual website, which is makingweddingswork.co.uk, and you can download our free Get Paid What You're Worth pricing guide. That's totally free. You just enter your email and then we'll send it straight out to you. And that guide, basically, it's a shortened version of everything that I've talked about when I've spoke at wedding industry events and things like that. When we do consulting one-to-one, it's a topic that we touch on there. So it's just condensed down into a nice PDF for you to just take bite-sized chunks from, bite-sized notes from, and then you can implement those strategies right away and you can get higher paying clients just by changing these simple, quick things to do with your pricing strategy. Now, let's jump straight back into the pod with today's guest and finish our conversation. So, you talked about you built your website yourself, but you're still getting inquiries through Google organically. So how much time, resource do you put into SEO side of that build of the website, and do you do stuff ongoing?
Yes. So not as much as I probably should. Like I know for the wedding suppliers, it's all about blogging, as people say. That is the kind of key, I think, sometimes to kind of publishing a new wedding. And talking about the venue and tagging that in, all the keywords and stuff. So I think I that's what I should be doing, and I don't do enough of it. But when the website initially launched, we spent a lot of time on that because we were kind of worried, like myself and Tim, he kind of chipped in as well. We were really worried that it would really dramatically affect like how people found us. So most of the kind of SEO side of things was sort of self-taught. We kind of followed the guides. What's the SEO tool? I forget, on WordPress. There's like a big one. I can't remember the name. Yes, that's it. Yeah. We kind of followed all their guides quite closely and followed their kind of traffic light system. So when we were doing posts, making sure it had all the kind of green lights, it had all the keywords and stuff. And so we did that for loads of old weddings and blogs, sort of blogged them as it were. And just took it a bit more seriously. That's something we never really did prior to the kind of website redesign. I think the first website initially was set up by a person that we knew, and we paid him, and so I think we just assumed that whatever he did, he worked his magic, and it seemed to do all right. So because I was doing it, we were really concerned that it would mess everything up. So we spent a lot of time on it, it's like I say, still don't blog as much as I should now, but we still seem to. I think it's still probably, I would say, around 40%-ish of our inquiries probably come from people saying they found us on Google.
Oh, cool. That's good. That's really good going. Yeah, that's amazing. So you're obviously spending so much time doing other stuff like that isn't related to filming the wedding or editing the wedding video. Like, how much of a percentage split do you think you spend between doing the craft and running the business? Like, what would you say?
Probably kind of like 60-40, I'd say. Like a lot of it is spent, as you guys probably know, a lot of time spent on editing. But obviously outside of kind of key wedding season, probably about 40-50% of it's kind of spent on all the other stuff, kind of like dealing with inquiries and bookings and trying to do more on social media and the website, and then with the corporate side of things as well, kind of dealing with kind of corporate clients and doing that sort of thing. So yeah, I'd say it's sort of 40-50%, I would say, probably spent on the kind of just the non-filming and editing.
And did you enjoy the business side of it, or is it something you thought you might outsource one day? Or
no, I'd definitely say I enjoy it. I'm a bit of a tech nerd. I listen to a lot of sort of tech podcasts, and I kind of I'm really interested in the kind of history of like Apple, the company Apple and that sort of thing. So I kind of, not I'm saying I'm Steve Jobs, I'm absolutely not Steve Jobs, but it's kind of like person that I might look up to, like kind of the way he did things and stuff. So I've always kind of took a keen interest, I think, in the business side of things and making maybe sort of trying to make the client experience like a good one, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's definitely never something I would outsource. Maybe, like I say, with the website, I did that myself, and that was a bit of a time sink. So maybe looking back, I might have outsourced that. But yeah, I really enjoy the kind of just the boring stuff, the financial side of things. I love looking at like a kind of forecast now that I've got that set up and seeing what's coming down the road.
So when you decided to set up your own company, was it something you embraced the challenge of having the unreliable pay and lack of certain benefits, things like pensions and all that sort of thing? Was that something you thought about from the start, or is it something you've sort of learned as you've gone on?
Yeah, probably learn as I've gone on. I think it's the first few years, like we all sort of worked part-time, and then did the business, and the other sort of got paid a part-time wage from that and tried to build it up. So we always kind of had that security in some aspects from other sources of income, and then going full-time sort of it felt like the right time when the three of us did that. We were full-time back when we were kind of VAT registered, and that worked out okay.
So what plans do you guys implement when you're thinking about the future for the business? Do you work on a year, like just next year, or are you thinking about a couple of years down the line? Do you have plans for the business?
So I'd say generally probably just looking to the year ahead. I definitely don't think I think too far into the future. I think back when we first started, we did, and we tried to think, okay, where do we want to be in the next sort of 2-3 years, and try to focus on areas such as the corporate side of the business to try and kind of grow that. But I think now that we've settled more on just sort of with the way we're structured now, and just mostly shooting weddings and doing it with a bit of corporate, I'm relatively content with that and happy with that kind of the lifestyle and shooting weddings and kind of shooting the amount that we do. So yeah, I don't know, I think kind of going back to the question earlier, I guess the next few years a goal would probably be to try and steadily increase the price, to maybe try and shoot less weddings. Again, not because I don't enjoy them, but just to try and have that more time with the family. But maybe one day, like we've spoke about the idea of just, if for some reason the kind of corporate side does grow and look like it might take off, then maybe kind of bringing one of the guys back into the business full time and kind of trying to go back to kind of growing it, because that still would be a goal, I would say. But it's just, I think we spent so long trying to crack the corporate side of things. I feel if we all feel like we've had a really good run at it and just haven't quite managed to do it. So I don't know, until we have some sort of epiphany, I'd say maybe just carry on as we are, I think.
So what would be your biggest tip for a newcomer in the wedding industry to success? If they might not necessarily be a videographer, maybe they're a photographer, a seamstress, cake maker. What would be your biggest thing for them to focus on, make sure they get right to succeed?
So I would say, outside of kind of just trying to improve your product, whether it be video, photo, stationery, whatever, definitely network, I think, is a big, I'd say, I think I mentioned earlier that about 40% of our inquiries come from sort of Google. I'd say about 50% of our inquiries come from previous couples, which as a newcomer, I understand you won't have necessarily have previous couples, but yeah, you can number one tip I'd say is just be nice, just be friendly, and you know, the nicer the nicer you are to work with at weddings, you know, the more likely that you're going to get referred via the venue or the photographer. And I think that a lot of our work comes from, you know, other suppliers. And I think that's something that you can implement quite quickly. Whereas, like, you know, referrals from past couples might take a couple of years to kind of start coming in. But then, and again, something that you can do quite quickly as well is if the cash allows, is to do kind of, you know, advertising on something like Facebook or Instagram. That's not something we do a lot of, but I know it's quite effective. I know, you know, lots of suppliers that kind of put a lot of their money, and time and energy into that, and it works really well for them. So yeah, maybe look into kind of doing sort of relatively inexpensive adverts on Instagram, I think, because that's a good place to find people.
Thanks very much for joining us, Dave. I think that's been really fantastic. You know, you were so open with your answers, you know, in a way that I hope a lot of people can appreciate. I'm sure so many people, whether they're at the start of the journey or already established in the wedding business, will get a lot of value out of those nuggets of information that you provided. I know I certainly did as well. You've made me think about things that I didn't necessarily appreciate as much before, so that's been really good for, you know, just for me. So personally, thanks. And yeah, I guess just, do you want to tell people where they can find you, see your work, follow you, things like that?
Yeah, sure. We're Blue Ridge Films, and our website is blueridge-weddings.com. I think we are Blue Ridge Weddings on Instagram. So that's probably the best place to sort of follow us.
So that was Steve there. I hope you all got so much value from that conversation. I know I did. I've learned a lot of things. There's some things I'm going to take away and implement now in my business. So yeah, just thanks again to Steve for being so open and transparent with those answers. I think that's really what everybody's looking to find out, and just being a really great guest to have on this episode of the show. Done? I think that's done.